about those events, then there's not a copyright concern with just talking about something. Now, that particular person that arrived there, they don't own those facts, and they don't own just because they're talking and you're recording. They don't own that that content, right? What they might own is maybe their right of publicity, which is not necessarily a copyright issue. If you're going to be somehow using that content, that person's voice, as part of a commercial for some other product, then that brings in these right of publicity questions of the person speaking. Then there's also potentially questions about third parties that aren't a part of your podcast at all. Is what that person saying, is it true? Or are they making stuff up about some third party, and are they being defamed in the process? The third party, I mean. Because you are publishing it. Publication is one of those elements of defamation. And you're publishing it to a third party, so another one of those elements. So it's very easy to get into hot water potentially defaming somebody who's not even a guest on your podcast. Yeah, go ahead.
That's kind of where I wanted to go to next, is how can a podcast host protect themselves from libel and slander concerns, other than just don't be an idiot?
Oh, sure. So I guess there's a couple of threshold issues there. First of all, is it your own show, right? Because maybe what you're doing is you're running a site where you're hosting third-party materials. You've got a bunch of podcasters who are sending you their shows to put on your website. If that's the case, then there's some potential to protect yourself through Communications Decency Act, also the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, because what you are in that instance potentially is internet service provider as opposed to an actual creator. But assuming that everybody's here interested in content and content clearance for their own shows, you partially do that through getting an agreement with your guests, preferably in writing. It's not just to say that you own the content that they might contribute to your show, but it's also to have them provide you with assurances that they're not violating some third party's rights. Now, just because your guest has signed off on something like that doesn't mean that some third party has agreed to that themselves, right? That they're not the ones who have signed your contract. So it's not like they've waived any of their rights. But that can, while not completely relieving you of potential liability, it might serve to mitigate it a little bit. And also, a good practice might be to look into insurance for your program.
Do you know of any podcasters doing that?
Errors and omissions?
Or no, who take out insurance? And I'm asking that not even rhetorically. I don't know people who've done it, and it doesn't seem like a terrible idea.
Well, as I think about it right now, no, I don't know of anybody that has said, "Yep, I'm definitely getting insurance." Actually, not true. Yes, but based on my advice, not because that's just what they were doing.
I want to, just in the spirit of time, and respectfully, Ilya,
sorry.
You were that guy. Rather than asking more of my questions, I wanted to take a couple minutes just to see if we have any questions on the floor, because this would cost you several $100s in real life, so this is a really good opportunity for you.
Oh, yeah, that guy discount.
Okay, because of the nature of my regular day job, I'm in the car driving around the city all day, and I often come across sites where they're filming TV shows in Chicago. As you know, there's multiple TV shows being filmed in Chicago all the time. And I'll get out of the car and start to shoot them with my camera. I'm shooting what they're shooting. And they always come over to me and claim copyright. And I always say to them, no, what's in your camera is your copyright. What's in my camera is my copyright. Am I right or wrong?
You're right, The only potential question there is, do you have a right to be where you are
I'm
standing?
on a public sidewalk.
Right. Yeah. I mean, technically speaking, you're in the right. Copyright would not be the way for them to stop you from filming. They maybe pulled some sort of permit with the city,
They did.
right? And which maybe allows them to exclude people from a particular area based on that
I always
permit.
stay behind the barrier.
Then they don't, technically speaking, have grounds to stop you. That doesn't mean they're not going to tell you something, hoping that
They
you're going to
tried,
leave.
but they've never done it.
All right, podcast? Yes, sir.
Can you tell me just a little bit about, like, every time I publish an episode, at the bottom of my episode, my hosting site puts copyright network name 2022. What's that doing for me? I don't quite understand what that means and what that does.
So it puts people on notice about who owns the content.
Okay.
Okay. Removing that sort of copyright management information can actually lead to additional potential liability if somebody does that. Okay. So as a minimum, do not remove other people's copyright notices from their content, even if you're using it without permission. Now that doesn't mean, don't equate that to mean that as long as I don't remove a copyright notice, then I'm allowed to use it. But that's a reason why somebody would do that.
And on my episodes, when I publish that, that's just saying I'm the one that owns that, and it was published this year, essentially. Is that correct?
Yes. You're the one that owns the rights in the overall content. That doesn't mean that like every little bit of content that's in there you own, and that's why it's good if you assuming you've got some sort of video component to your podcast. That's why it's good if you're bringing in third-party content that you are actually providing credit to who owns it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll see one more question. Yes.
For like theme music and things like that, what if you go through something that's in public domain or royalty-free music? Do you still need to clear that somewhere, or?
If it's truly public domain, then you're good to go. Now there is an important distinction there in that all music has two copyrights for the composition and for the sound recording. So if you're talking about a composition that maybe is over 100 years old, but the recording of it of that performance is much more recent, then you might still need to worry about, is that recording in the public domain? Royalty free, what that is it's that's the license, right? So whenever you're thinking about pulling, whether it's video content or music content, whatever it is, be aware of what the terms are that the content is being offered under. Royalty-free might mean that you don't have to pay, but it might still require you to provide some sort of credit or whatever other conditions might be attached to that license. And if you're not following the conditions that are there, then you may as well have just infringed somebody's copyright.
All right, we're going to stop it there. Ilya Zlatkin, super helpful information.